The following is a production of DallasCowboys.com and the Dallas Cowboys Football Club.
How about them Cowboys?
Go Cowboys! This is Girls Talk, Boys Talk, presented by Jigsaw Dating, preferred dating partner of the Dallas Cowboys, and broadcasting live from Dallas Cowboys World Headquarters at the Star.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Girls Talk, Boys Talk, presented by Jigsaw, the preferred dating partner of the Dallas Cowboys. Jess Navarez, Christy Skills, Aisha Morrison here with you on this Thursday overcasty afternoon that we're seeing here at the beautiful Star in Frisco, live from the SWBC Podcast Studios. Ladies, let's get right to it. If anybody has any questions throughout the rest of the show, please text us at 817-290-3298. The Dallas Cowboys practice report came out, and there was a new addition, and we're going to get right into it, but let's just do a little overview first. Both Tyler Smith and Brandon Cooks did not participate. Tyler Smith still dealing with that hamstring injury for the second week now. Brandon Cooks dealing with that knee injury, which we'll get into a little bit as well. Also did not participate. Zach Martin, newly added to that practice report, limited with a groin injury. Safety Donovan Wilson, he was limited and he was active. We'll talk about what we saw at practice as well with that calf injury. And then Tyron Smith, a full go for the second day in a row at practice. All right, Christy, let's jump right to this because Zach Martin being added to that practice report. The sky is falling again. People are panicking. Again, I'm so glad we can bring you that sense of relief when these kind of things happen. Let's talk about this because we were talking about this before we started recording of the protocol that goes into these practice reports, first of all, and when things like this happen, kind of, people jump to panic, but why that might not be the case when you see something like this happen.
Yeah, that you're required by league rules. If a player misses any part of practice, then they need to be added to the report. And then on Friday afternoon, you'll have your final one of the week, but generally it's Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday is when you have to provide those. When you have Thursday night football games, you have to provide it earlier in the week. But the one thing about Zach Martin is it's listed as a groin injury. So because he missed part of practice today, by rule, he needs to be included on the injury report that's made mid-afternoon Central Time to the league office. I'll give you an example. The Cowboys had a walkthrough yesterday that was later in the afternoon. Well, it was after the time that, it was required. So, that was already turned in before they even had their afternoon practice, just because there's a certain deadline that needs to be met. The one thing about Zach Martin with a groin injury, it's kind of like Tyler Smith with a hamstring or Donovan Wilson with a calf injury. We've talked about, Aisha, I know we've hit on it the past couple weeks, these soft tissue injuries. So it's one of those things where even if Zach is full go and able to play on Sunday, and he spoke in the locker room afterwards, there was no indication that he was going to miss time or anything like that, but still these soft tissue injuries are something that just kind of sometimes seem to linger and just have to kind of be nursed along during the week leading into game day.
Yeah, even seeing Donovan out there today, it didn't register to me that this was the first time we've seen him in pads in how long, y'all?
Well, it was the first day of training camp practice back on July 25th when he hurt his calf.
That feels like forever ago.
That's what I'm saying. And so, again, to your point, with anything that's soft tissue, it's I think sometimes they're extra cautionary about them, and I think that's the right way to go about it. But to your point, seeing Zach and seeing him move around and stuff, he didn't seem like there was anything. But you also just added, doesn't matter what part of practice that they missed. It could be any part. They have to report it. So
the one thing that's disappointing is that Brandon Cooks was a DNP, did not practice, and so that doesn't bode well for Sunday because today was the heavy practice day. Usually Wednesdays and Thursdays are your heavy practice days, and today was actually a padded practice. You only get 14 of those during a regular season, and so they're valuable. level.
Right.
And so when you miss one, it's disappointing. But we're not saying that Brandon's not going to be able to go on Sunday, but the
We don't
fact
know
that he was DNP both Wednesday and Thursday, that's unfortunate.
During practice today, Brandon Cooks was in street gear, so he wasn't even dressed out. He was working with Britt Brown exclusively on the side with the resistance ropes, which is kind of the pattern we've been seeing of guys that aren't going to participate in practice. They're obviously not dressed out. Tyler Smith was also working there. They were kind of taking turns with those ropes as well. So we don't know yet. Again, we don't know the availability. We don't know any of that. Mike McCarthy doesn't typically really say anything when it comes to those because, again, he wants to give them every single opportunity to really know when he's ready. And so Brandon Cooks, we really don't know. Tyler Smith, still we don't know. But Donovan Wilson, like we were talking about, it was good to see him getting integrated back in. So it said he was limited. While we were outside in practice, what we saw was him doing the team stretches with the rest of the guys. It was him, J-Ron, and then Malik all lined up together. They were stretching together. And then for a little bit, Donovan went back to Britt Brown, did some resistance rope work, and then he went right back to his position group drills. So it was really cool to see him kind of hyped up. And a moment that Aisha noticed, I wanted her to talk about this because she drew attention to it when we were standing right there. I didn't see it, but what did you see between Britt Brown and Donovan Wilson during that time?
Sorry, that's when it registered to me that he's been working with Britt Brown for how long now? I'm trying to do the math. Like, has it been over a month?
Oh yeah, well, July.
Well over a month.
Yeah. So when they embraced each other. That's what I saw. It's like Britt was just, telling him like, okay, you're good to go. Like, go ahead and get out there. But he gave him. They hugged each other, and it was for a good little amount of time, and you could tell that it was like, you're okay, kiddo. You've done the work. Go ahead and go do your thing. Yeah. And it was just, for me, we've seen, Britt Brown he's been recognized as one of the best trainers in the NFL. The Cowboys training staff has been voted one of the better training staffs in the NFL. But I know that as someone that's gone through rehab, you connect to your PT or your trainers in a different way. They see your down days, they see your up days. It's a lot of emotion, a lot of frustration. So I know that Britt is probably very connected to some of these guys with some of these major injuries they've gone through. And I thought it was just nice to see a little bit of that, have the pleasure to see a little bit of that today.
And Britt is not a guy that tosses verbal bouquets. Okay?
No.
Yeah, he is I won't say crusty. I've known Britt a long time.
Yeah.
But he doesn't suffer fools gladly, and he's a person that you earn his respect, and then you have it. I mean,
yes.
he has to be so diligent, and part of it, like you say, Aisha, when you're a PT or they actually gave him a job title promotion, director of rehabilitation for Britt, but a lot of it is the psychological part, and he. He has so much invested in these guys, and you help them along psychologically as well as physically in their rehab. But just to see the pride that Britt has taken in Terrence Steele's rehab,
Absolutely.
for example, it's something that he and I were talking about a few weeks ago, and he's just so proud and happy for him. And so the Cowboys fan base, a lot of you have heard the name Britt Brown, but I just want you to know that he is one of the most respected people in the entire building, not just players and coaches, and medical staff, but all of us who have a chance to see what happens behind the scenes.
What I also like too is Mike McCarthy, when he talks about Britt, he talks about it being a constant conversation.
Sure.
So it's not like they go without communicating and then all of a sudden, hey, so and so is not participating. No, Mike and Britt have a very good working relationship from the sounds of it. They communicate constantly, and like you said, they put an emphasis on that mental return too, because it's not just about your physical return. And I love how open Mike McCarthy is about talking about that aspect of a major injury return, because not a lot of people really think about it that way. They think, oh, well, they're ready, their body's ready, get them out on the field now. They're a football player, but they're also a human, right? So with that comes the human emotion of when somebody gets injured, it's natural for you to mentally kind of not be in that mindset for such a long time, especially when they're rehabbing and coming back, and that's kind of where their mentals are. So something that I really have enjoyed watching Mike McCarthy do is just really, and we've talked about this before, emphasize the mental health aspect of the game and how important it is for his guys. And again, that goes back to the culture and why I think a lot of these guys are so bought into it as well. Yeah,
and there's a new person that helps with that part of it. Her name is Dr. Heather Tweedle, and Heather, she's in the player development program, but mental health and wellness consultant. Of course, Chad has worked with the Cowboys for several years, comes in on the weekends, and he actually pulled double duty. He works Yankees and Cowboys. So when we were at Giant Stadium last week, he actually had the baseball game in the afternoon and then came to the Cowboys sideline for the afternoon. And then since we like to pull back the curtain and tell people about how things work behind the scenes, John Park is the new director of football research for the Cowboys. But one thing that a lot of people don't know is whenever the Cowboys are out on the practice field, even if they're not in full pads, even if they're in their smaller shoulder pads called shells, there are computer chips in there. And so John and his staff are over kind of just past the end zone, little card table set up with a laptop on top of it, and when they're GPS tracking them. So you hear Coach McCarthy often in his press conference mention GPS. Well, that's what they're doing. So every player has a certain threshold that they would like them to reach but not exceed. And so as a player, John and his staff, they're looking at their laptops and they're getting the live information. It's how much ground is being covered by the players. Now, someone like Jordan Lewis working his way back from the foot injury, someone like Donovan Wilson, their threshold may be lower as they're working their way back, and maybe not 100% as if they had never been injured. And so the football research staff, the medical staff, the athletic training staff, the coaches, they're all working on this together. And so if a player exceeds his threshold, they'll pull them out for the drills or in the day. Or maybe if they don't meet the threshold, they'll go back, hey, tomorrow, we want to see this.
Very good stuff there. Of course, we're going to talk more about, say some of these guys are not available, what that means as far as the depth in these position groups. We're going to take our first break. We're going to get right into that as soon as we get back. But in the meantime, text us your questions, 817-290-3298. We're going to get to them after this break. This is Girls Talk, Boys Talk, presented by Jigsaw, the preferred dating partner of the Dallas Cowboys. We'll be right back.
We know that juicy, cheesy, grilled to perfection burger sounds amazing, but it does sound like something is missing. Pepsi, baby! The yin to this burger's yang. Burgers and Pepsi go together like burgers and Pepsi. This perfect blending of flavors makes every bite of lettuce, every sesame seed on the bun, and every sip of that crisp, refreshing, ice-cold cola a journey to Foodtopia. Burgers, better with Pepsi. That's what I like.
At Jigsaw Dating, we obviously want the Cowboys to bring that sixth ring home. But to be honest, we're more focused on finding the person who will put a ring on your finger. That's why we created a dating app that reveals your face through meaningful conversation, so you can date deeper. Because it's personality that matters the most, not looks. Join Jigsaw Dating today, dating partner of the Dallas Cowboys.
Back to Girls Talk, Boys Talk, presented by Jigsaw, the preferred dating partner of the Dallas Cowboys. We're talking about depth in certain position groups as they relate to potential availability or not. But first, Rally Days, presented by SeatGeek, give NFL fans an experience of a lifetime the day prior to Dallas Cowboys home games. On September 16th, enjoy activities at the Miller Lighthouse, get a behind-the-scenes tour of AT&T Stadium, and more. Visit attstadium.com/rallydays for more information and to go get your tickets today. All right, ladies, let's get into this because, again, now in question is a couple of things with this injury report coming out. One, the depth of the wide receiver room if Brandon Cooks is not available. Two, the depth of the offensive line if, Tyler Smith doesn't return. Chuma Edoga, we saw that, but is he a guy that we're going to see more of? We'll get into that. And then that also stands a question of Zach Martin. What are we going to see from that? Tyron Smith, full go, but just in case, let's look at the depth of the whole offensive line. Let's start with our wide receiver core first, because I feel like that's something that is interesting, really, when you look at how it's such a different spot you're in this position now compared to a year ago, where you didn't have this, I guess, availability to be so picky and say, oh, well, we have this guy and this guy and this guy and this guy and this guy that can really step up if somebody's not available. So Brandon Cooks not being out, Aisha, I'm going to defer to you first. What do you think that means? If he's not available, if we don't know yet, if he's not available for Sunday's game, what does that mean for the rest of the group, and who do you see kind of taking more in that rotation?
I mean, depending on how they work it, I would assume obviously Jalen Tolbert would be the next guy up, and possibly Jalen Brooks would take Jalen Tolbert's snaps on special teams, because that's where he thrives anyway. So that is what I'm going to assume is how that would work. Jalen Tolbert's ready. I think he's gained this offense's trust in what he showed in preseason and his consistency through in training camp. And I just think he would be ready for the opportunity if he had to come out there. So that's how I assume they would handle it.
Yeah, I think you're right on it. There are 6 wide receivers on the 53-man roster, but Jalen Brooks, the rookie, was inactive for game 1. And so if Cooks is unable to go, then Brooks would be active, and everybody moves up the pecking order. So it would be C.D. Lamb, Michael Gallup, Jalen Tolbert, Kavonte Turpin, and Jalen Brooks. And so, but the other thing, you're losing if Cooks can't play, that's a valuable weapon. But remember, you got all those tight ends too.
Yeah,
that's
and
fair.
so can spread the ball amongst the tight ends as well. But Aisha, the important point you made amongst many in that is the special teams, and Jalen Tolbert taking over for Kelvin Joseph as the gunner. So you've got C.J. Goodwin on one side and Jalen Tolbert, who in his first work as a gunner in an NFL regular season game got a tackle last week. So kudos to him. But yes, Jalen Brooks would have to take a big role on special teams.
A couple of things I wanted to make mention of was, one, I talked to Jalen Brooks in the locker room today, just kind of like, hey, if this happens, how are you feeling? No one really knows yet. And he said, well, it's such a weird position. You can tell he's still younger, right? And I love this, because I love talking to these younger guys about how vulnerable they'll talk with you about things. And he said, obviously I'm ready to go if my number's called, but I hate what has to happen in order for me to be ready to go, right? Like, he was saying he hates kind of the possibility of Brandon Cooks not playing because of an injury, but he said, I'm also ready to go, and that is because of the leadership that Brandon Cooks has given all of us, and because of everything that I've learned and soaked in, and I had a good preseason. And I said, okay, so if you could take one thing of your game and kind of polish it up from what you learned in the preseason, what would it be? And he said, the point of attack. I want to be more physical, and I want to attack all the way through.
That's what you want to work on?
Yeah. And I said, boy, what?
I feel like that was some of the best work he did, but that's just me.
But once you get to the regular season, different thing.
No, that's fair.
And
He's up against one corner. Yeah,
he
you're right.
wants to make it just better.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, because you're going against the ones and
Yeah.
not the 2s and 3s
That's
that
fair.
you see
So
in preseason.
it was cool. It was cool to touch base with him a little bit. Something I want to make mention of is, Christy, you talked about how the tight ends can get involved, and when you win a game 40-0, there's not much to be picky about. We talked about this. But something that's been coming up, a reoccurring theme, was the drop balls by the tight end room during the game. Dak Prescott talked about this earlier when we were all in the scrum. What I loved about this is some notes that I took when he was talking. He said that he's always talking with them. He actually sat in the film room with them, not because they asked him to or anything, or he felt like he had to. He just said, because I wanted to, and I always communicate with not just them, but Lunda Wells, the tight ends coach as well. He said they had a tough game, but his job right now is to keep them focused and make them understand that they have not lost his trust.
Yes.
He also said they'll have a way better game this week. I can promise you that.
Oh, yeah.
I think that is so
That was good stuff.
important. Out of everything that Dak said today, and Dak always has great interviews, when he said that, my ears just perked up instantly, because, again, it's so important for him as a quarterback to be so self-aware to say, look, I got to take care of my guys next to me and understand that, yes, it wasn't your best game. We're all on the same page of that. We're wiping it away. I still trust you because of everything we've done before that. So I just wanted to make mention
Yeah, I
of that.
wouldn't be surprised if it goes early and often to
I
Ferguson
mean,
and
there should
Hendershot.
be looking at how the Jets play defense. They play quarters a lot. The middle of the field is open a lot. So hopefully we'll see some passes to the tight ends, and I know they're going to use them in the blocking game as well. Maybe we see some slippage and them, using some of the things they're doing in 12 and 13 personnel to get those guys open and get them opportunities.
Very good stuff. And talking about tight ends, well, their blocking abilities. Let's go to that and how that could be helpful too if there's not as much offensive line depth. Say there's not availability for certain players on that injury report. Let's talk about Chuma. Chuma Edoga, he's a veteran player, and I think a lot of people seem to forget how much time he's actually played in the NFL. No, you're okay. How much he's actually played in the NFL, because I was talking to Terrence Steele today, just quickly. Everybody was talking to Zach Martin. Terrence is standing right there. I'm standing outside of the scrum, and I was like, sorry, Terrence, I'm kind of in your way. Caught up with Terrence in the meantime, and I asked him about Chuma. How do you think he did? And he said, oh, he teaches me stuff. He's a veteran guy. I'm like, you're right. People do seem to forget that sometimes. So, Christy, I know you got to catch up with Chuma and talk to him a little bit. What did he tell you?
Yeah, I just wanted to talk to him because he actually began his career with the Jets. First, he's a 5-year guy, so 5th year now with the Cowboys. He spent last year with Atlanta, but his first 3 seasons were with the Jets. He was a 3rd-round pick. They actually moved up a couple spots so that they made sure that they got him. But he's gone against Quinnen Williams and those guys, right? So he knows he's practiced against them. And then he also, Robert Saleh, who's the head coach of the Jets and was the defensive coordinator for San Francisco and so successful, such a good defensive coach. Chuma's final year with the Jets was Saleh's first year as head coach with the Jets. So he knows him and said that he enjoyed playing with him and for him, and kind of a competitive, demanding guy, but brought a lot of spirit to the team, so he enjoyed playing for him. But yeah, I think Edoga played really well, and just kudos to him because it's kind of like Awesome Richards. What happened in preseason was they got all of these practice snaps in one area in training camp, and then once the game goes around, then playing tackle instead of guard, or vice versa for Chuma. And then of course he suffered the knee injury in preseason and missed some time. So to be able to come back from that injury and then get thrust into the starting lineup when Tyler Smith comes up with the hamstring injury just a few days before going into the season opener, it's great to have a veteran. And to your point, Zach, Terrence, everybody, just nothing but words of great things to say about Chuma.
Something that I want to toss to Aisha for, because we were sitting there and this video came up on Twitter that you were like, did you see this? And it was a video of Tyler Biotish and kind of how he was helping Chuma Edoga out on a specific play. Something that I think gets misconstrued is how the cohesiveness within the offensive line is affected when injuries do happen. However, these guys go in rotation with everybody else. So even if a guy is out, they've worked with that guy next to them before. You should talk about that play a little bit, because it was something that I could see your little football brain just go ding. That's cool. So talk about what you saw with that.
It was just him keeping his assignment, honestly. Like I think they were double teaming in the middle of the defensive line. I can't describe it. Like, I had to see it. But they were double teaming, and Tyler Biotish goes and helps out Zach Martin and Terrence Steele, and he comes over to the left side and seals off picks up that block for Dak Prescott. I know you can picture it. I
know the exact play you're talking about.
Yes.
He came back. He probably covered about 9 or 10 yards coming off and getting back and coming off Dak's blind side.
Yes, ma'am. And it's the communication there, and just the awareness from Tyler, I think is that's huge. Just to know, look, everything's covered up right here. That means there's somebody going free to my quarterback, and to get there and to hold his assignment, I thought that was important. And talking back to talking about Chuma and the offensive line, I touched base with quite a bit of the guys on the offensive line today, because the Jets defense has the ability to rotate guys in and out, very similar to the Cowboys. And so I wanted to talk to the guys, because I talked to Terrence Steele too. I was curious on how do you guys handle that? How do you scout that? What is that like? How do you prepare for that? And they just are like, we have to prepare for everything. Just like you were saying, they're like, we have to prepare for everything, because you never know when a guy's going to go down. You never know when they're going to rotate a different guy in. And it was kind of surprising to me, just the level of preparation they have to do, because it's not just, oh, I'm going mano-a-mano with the same guy all game. They have to prepare for changes, double teams, all that stuff. And it was just insightful for me to have that conversation with Tyler Biotish and Terrence today about the offensive line and having to be prepared for anything like you were talking about, Jess.
Yeah, Zach echoed something very similar to what Terrence and Tyler told you, and that is that they have 8. We got so many Tylers. Everybody's name starts with a T. Anyway, except for Zach. But Zach was saying that there are the 8 guys along that line, and they all play. So it's just the same way that the Cowboys have such depth along the line. They're all good. There's not a lot of fall off from first to second team. So, and just one more point about Zach being limited and coming up on the injury report today, limited with the groin issue, and that is a guy like T.J. Bass, who is his backup, or even like Jalen Brooks getting extra time on the practice field with Brandon Cooks at wide receiver not participating today. So valuable to get those practice reps with first teamers because, again, only 14 padded practices during the regular season, and certainly it's not game speed, but those you don't get many opportunities in an NFL regular season if you're a backup to get a first team rep.
Oh, yeah.
So
yes, ma'am.
every single one of them is valuable.
That's a very good point. They don't get a lot of time. Sorry.
No, all you.
Heck yeah, girl.
Yeah, all you. Something else I wanted to make mention of with everything that was said today, a big topic of conversation, especially with the Cowboys offense and this new Texas Coast system that they've created under Mike McCarthy calling the plays, is not chasing big plays. And that's something that we've heard echoed really all week. Mike McCarthy mentioned it in a press conference earlier this week, and I know everybody kind of grabbed onto that because that's such an interesting concept when it comes to football, is when you think of football, you think you want big plays every single time. But the way Mike McCarthy actually goes about this, to me, is just so fascinating when he's talking about the art of not chasing big plays. And then you even hear the guys in the locker room talking about it. And it's true. It really is. So, Christy, I'm going to go to you for this first, and then we can open it up for discussion. But when Mike McCarthy mentioned not going for the big plays, not chasing them, I should say, not chasing them every single time, why is that so important as part of this game?
Well, I think that when fans think of big plays in media, we think about Dak throwing an 8, like a deep post, or throwing a bomb, a 9 route, just airing it out down the field. Don't we think of that as a big play in the passing game?
Yeah.
But Dak made a very interesting point today. It's not that it's not big plays, it's that I just need to get the ball to the guys in space, because they're so good at run after catch that you still end up with big plays because they can get those extra yards. So I think that is a frame of reference. I think that we need to kind of adjust the way that we think of big plays. It's not Dak taking a 5-step drop and just airing the sucker out. I mean, it's making sure that your playmakers have the opportunity to get yards after catch.
Yeah, honestly, look at Philly. Look at the 49ers. They all do it. It's obviously it's a part of the West Coast system in itself.
Yeah.
But when you look at the way that those teams have seen success, on the offensive side of the ball, that's a lot of what they're doing too. It's just you get the ball to your playmakers in space, make sure that the spacing is good so they can go to work, and they do a lot of the work for you.
Exactly.
They do a
right.
lot of the work for you as a
right.
quarterback. But to your point, Jess, in regard to the offense and not chasing big plays, I also look at it as listening to some of the things that Mike McCarthy said today. He mentioned, just establishing something, and he mentioned that you really have 4 weeks until you establish anything on the offensive side of the ball specifically. And I think that's important too with this first couple of weeks while we're watching them get into a rhythm and everything. It's like they're figuring things out. Defenses are trying to figure things out in regard to them. So chasing the big play, I also look at on the other side of it is like they're trying to establish their offense during this time, and maybe that doesn't require you trying to chase big plays because you're just trying to get a feel, a foundation, timing. Guys are getting in game shape too, which matters. So that's just something I thought about when he mentioned it today.
Yeah. And the other thing with big plays, again, I think most of us think of a passing game, but in the run game, it's blocking downfield. It's when they get into, past that initial point and they get into the second level, when your wide receivers or your tight ends are throwing good blocks downfield. Look, Tony Pollard, it's all those, and it's yards after contact as well, instead of a 2-yard gain, maybe it's a 6-yard gain. Now, that's not technically a big play because it's usually judged in the run game of 10 yards plus. But we talked about it earlier in the week about some of the good blocking downfield by the wide receivers, and it's all tied together. That's why football is the ultimate team game.
Absolutely, and one more point, and then we'll go to break. As Dak mentioned, that they want to live within the play, understand why the play is called, and capitalize when they're called. So the biggest thing there is execution and executing when it does happen. We're going to switch gears and we're going to talk about the defense a little bit in our next block. Keep sending us your questions, 817-290-3298. This is Girls Talk, Boys Talk, presented by Jigsaw, the preferred dating partner of the Dallas Cowboys. We'll be right back.
At Jigsaw Dating, we obviously want the Cowboys to bring that 6th ring home. But to be honest, we're more focused on finding the person who will put a ring on your finger. That's why we created a dating app that reveals your face through meaningful conversation, so you can date deeper. Because it's personality that matters the most, not looks. Join Jigsaw Dating today, dating partner of the Dallas Cowboys.
You know that sound anywhere. It's the crisp crunch of that first nacho chip. With its perfect cheese to sour cream ratio sitting atop a layer of delicious beans, it's a sip away from perfection. That's what we're looking for. Add a delicious, refreshing Pepsi and we've achieved absolute nacho nirvana. Because while you can pile those nachos high with every spicy, cheesy, savory topping, there's no topping a cool Pepsi finish. Nachos, better with Pepsi. That's what I like.
To Girls Talk, Boys Talk, presented by Jigsaw, the preferred dating partner of the Dallas Cowboys. We were going to talk all things Dallas Cowboys defense, but first, head to the Pro Shop at Arlington Parks Mall in Arlington, Texas on Saturday, September 23rd between 11 a.m. and 4 p.m. for the Dallas Cowboys collections on tour. See rare team archives, customize headwear, and grab a gift with purchase and enter for a chance to win a giveaway. Stay tuned for more tour stops coming throughout the season as well. All right, so you can send us your questions for this last segment. We'll answer them as we get them in. 817-290-3298. We got a question from Keith, and he is from Kentucky. So, Keith, thank you for sending your question. Ladies, the question is, are we ever going to get all 22 starters on the field at one time to start a game? Who wants to take this one first?
You go first, Aisha.
Oh, it's not likely.
Yeah.
I don't know how to say it in any other way. It's just I really don't know if there's any team in the NFL right now that's fielding the same team that they had in week 1. It's just it's the nature of the game. That's why you have to prepare. That's why you have to have a Britt Brown. That's why you have to, that's why you have to do those things. So, I mean, crazy enough with the Cowboys though, they've started the playoffs as healthy as you can be.
Yes.
I mean, I believe that's how they kind of try to work things. So I'm sorry to tell you, Keith, but It don't play. It don't
Yeah,
happen like
I
that.
agree. It's not likely. It's not likely that it is the NFL, and I wish it were so.
Yeah,
I
that'd
think
be
I think I'm
nice.
as the sideline reporter. My bread and butter is the injury reports. If I do a report in the game on Dallas Cowboys Radio Network, there's about a 90% chance that it's not good news. So I think I'm the only media person who wants less airtime because I'm kind of like the IRS. You don't want to hear from me.
Oh, God.
So it's a really, I think it's a really great game if I have very few
Little airtime.
reports. Yeah.
Well, if it
yeah.
makes you feel better, we don't see you as the IRS.
Oh,
we,
well,
we
thanks
love
so much.
seeing you.
Yeah,
We love hearing
yeah.
from you here on the podcast. If that helps any.
Thank you. So much better.
I ain't never heard nobody describe themselves as the IRS.
And then there's Christy. You know.
Yeah, there you go. You don't want to hear from her. Don't get that call. Or was it Ronan? You don't want Ronan Farrow to call you.
Oh, there
or
you go.
didn't, back in the day, you didn't want Mike Wallace from 60 Minutes to show up
Oh,
in your
man.
office. It probably was bad
would not
news.
be good.
There's a scandal coming.
Oh man! All right, guys. Well, let's talk a little bit of defense. We heard from Micah Parsons today, and Micah is just Micah. I mean, man, this guy. Anytime Micah talks, it's just so interesting to me. But the little nugget that I did get from him today that I wanted to talk about was he talked about, or he was asked. I think it was by Jeff Kolb. He was asked about his boxing training and how that's translated well for him in this game now, and he said he learns how to be attacked under pressure, and it's kind of the same as sparring, as you learn how to just take it and take the hits. I thought that was interesting. He learned how it helps his hands and all of that, but Micah Parsons obviously just such a dynamic player, and he is that guy. He's your general, if you will, on the defensive side of the ball. Let's talk about kind of how, obviously, when teams face Micah, they're gonna try to do what they can to release that ball quickly so Micah doesn't get to your quarterback. What can the Jets offensive line, I'll go to you first, Aisha, what can the Jets offensive line do to kind of hold off not just the pass rush from Micah Parsons, but you have a Tank Lawrence on the other side as well, and to avoid what poor Daniel Jones had to see last week with the pass rush?
I mean, they had quite a few sets last game where they did 12, 13 personnel, sometimes 14. They're bringing in extra tight ends to help out, just as the Cowboys do as well. This offensive line is far better in run blocking than pass blocking. Spoke to Damone Clark, and he said that this is the biggest offensive line that they might see, and he's talking about size, and it's so weird because their footwork is not the best, but they're able to get up the field and they're able to have some success with their run game. So I expect for them to try to neutralize a lot of what the Cowboys do, especially aggressively with countering it with screens, lots of misdirection to get their eyes looking in different places, because the way that the Cowboys rally to the ball and the way they flood to the ball, it's difficult I think it's going to be difficult for this offensive line to get out in space the way they want to. They're not a super powerful offensive line. They do a lot more zone blocking and stuff. So I'm the way that you neutralize a pass rush like the Cowboys, like a Micah Parsons, is that you run. Or you do things to get them out. I don't know about that, but you run. So I think that's something that this defense expects. Touching base with a lot of them this week, I wanted to get a feel for their temperament with the fact that teams looking at that game are going to decide to run the ball.
Sure.
They're going to, and Mike McCarthy's talked about this.
Oh, yeah.
He's talked about the fact that they are aware of what they possess from a D-line standpoint and how that's going to change people's game plans. Yeah, this team is probably going to try to run the ball in various different ways, and it's the Cowboys' defense job to stop it and earn the pass rush, and from there it's curtains.
I love that. Earn the pass rush is so important because if you take away the run game and put them in longer down and distance and force Zach Wilson to have to pass the ball, but also if your special teams or if your offense, that they can get a lead. Daniel Jones had no chance last year, falling behind so early last week.
Feels like last year. It's been a long
He
week.
had no chance. They had to pass the ball because they were behind. But I think what's really important about the run game is this sounds so elementary. It's so fundamental, but tackling is so important this week, and limiting the yards after contact, because Jets are number one in the NFL after week one, over 5.5 yards after contact per rush. And so it's going to be swarm tackling and wrap up, and not let Breece Hall or Dalvin Cook get any of these yards after contact.
Something I wanted to make sure to mention, speaking of Breece Hall, he was on the injury report again for the second day. The Jets injury report really didn't change from yesterday. So you have Dwayne Brown, offensive lineman with a shoulder injury. He was limited. Mekhi Becton, offensive lineman, knee injury limited. And then Breece Hall, running back, knee injury limited as well. And something Micah was asked about today specifically was the dynamic duo of Breece Hall and Dalvin Cook, that kind of 1-2 punch that the Jets have found success with. He was asked, how do you prepare for facing a two-back team? And he said, we try to play more honest and we make them play from behind. So it just kind of ties into everything that we're saying there. Something that I thought was funny in terms of Micah Parsons is he has such a special way of looking at this game. Somebody asked him, how do you feel about being double teamed? When somebody's double teaming you, how do you take that? And he said, I take it as a term of respect. If you feel like you have to do more for me, you respect me more. That's kind of how he put it out there. And then he said, for example, Myles Garrett on the Jets defense understands that as well. So I just think when it comes to this game, it's really the battle of which defensive side can get off to a quicker start. And I think the offenses will speak for themselves, right? And you're going to see more of a full Cowboys offense now that they're not in a rain plan. And of course, they all laughed about that, saying, yeah, there's not going to be any rain at AT&T Stadium on the inside. And so you're not under a rain plan. You're kind of going to see both teams at this point, both offenses, showing their hands to what they are more. Because, one, the Jets were not prepared, for anything to happen to Aaron Rodgers like it did. So they kind of had to adjust on the fly with Zach Wilson. They've had a full week to prepare now. The Cowboys obviously had to divert to a rain plan, which is not their usual game plan. They're kind of playing at the same pace right now as far as the offenses go, of figuring out what their footing is and establishing within those 4-week marks, like you mentioned earlier, Aisha, that Mike McCarthy said. So there's that. Ladies, I want to pose this question to you as I continue to check for more questions. Who do you project, offensively, defensively, special teams, whatever the case is, to have a really big game on Sunday, and why?
Go on, Christy.
Well, on a defense, I think I'm going to go linebacker, just because whether it's Leighton or Damone, just because I think stopping the run is going to be huge. Osa, they're the middle of the line, Hankins. I just, like we've talked about, you expect the Jets to try and establish that run game. And so I think if the interior of our line and our linebackers have totaled a lot of tackles, then that's a good thing. Offensively, I think that's going to be real interesting, especially if Brandon Cooks doesn't play. Let's see if Michael Gallup maybe gets a few more. There are too many games where he's not a factor. And so, I think CD's going to get his, but Michael may get some extra opportunities on Sunday.
You think they're going to double CD at all?
Yeah.
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 Are they never
Well,
going to?
Come on, 'cause they-
they really, they've got good corners with Reed and Sauce. So I don't. How much did they double, if any, on Monday night?
None. They didn't really double Stephon Diggs like that, and he made them pay, which is what I'm saying. It's like, I wonder if
Lightning
they
doesn't strike twice in the same spot, right?
Yeah, because I mean, when you look at them on film, like a lot of the stuff they do is like cover 3, cover 4. But I was thinking like, they might change it up. They might change it up and do some things differently. But to answer your question, Jess, I'm sorry. Offense, I'm going to go with Ferg. I think he bounces back. There's going to be a lot of opportunities, I believe, there for the tight ends to get mismatches with the size of some of their corners and stuff in space. And from the defensive side of the ball, tater tots. Who's intermediate? I feel like whoever is playing in that front seven, I would say
J-Ron,
maybe
Marquise.
J-Ron Curse,
Marquise
maybe
Bell.
J-Ron Curse or Deron Bland has a good game, because I don't expect Zach Wilson to be throwing the ball down the field a
far.
lot. I think a lot of what we're going to see action-wise will be the Cowboys making him play from, the middle of the field down
I thought
to
you
the
were going
box.
to talk defensively. I thought you were going to say Osa. I was waiting for you to say Osa.
I've been saying Osa since the season started, so at this point, I feel like he's going to get his anyway. He's not a surprise to me no more.
There you go. Micah talked about Osa today, saying he's a bad man, and he's finally putting it all together.
Anything
to
for you,
utilize his
Osa.
strength. Yep,
The double team you.
He really did. Okay, I'm gonna go with offensively. I'm gonna say Jalen Tolbert. You stole Michael Gallup. That was my first go-to because I think the ball distribution is something that we didn't even get to touch base on really in the podcast this week, but we didn't see it because guess what? Rain plan really threw everybody off for what we would actually see.
Yeah, and having a big lead. And having a
There's
big
no
lead
point.
and resting your starters in the fourth quarter.
Basically feeling like a preseason game.
Yeah, it was.
Now, I'm going to go with Jalen Tolbert. You went with Michael Gallup. That was my first guy, but I'm going to go Jalen Tolbert here because I think, again, he's a guy that you just really, man, you haven't even seen the best of him yet. You've seen glimpses of what he can be, but now that it's the season, he's ready, he's in his groove, you're about to see a big takeoff from Jalen Tolbert throughout the rest of the season. I think it starts with this game. Defensively, I'm going to go with, I'm going to go with Tank. I'm going to say Tank because Micah Parsons, yes, everybody knows, but Tank, he has that juice back, and you really talk to him, and he feels rejuvenized, if you will, with how this defensive line is playing, rather, giving him the opportunity to pass rush. He looked very quick. He looked so quick in this last game as far as getting off of the edge a little bit quicker, and he was just bullying and bullying and bullying. So I think when he gets warm, he gets hot, you're going to get some possible Tank sacks.
And he's so good against the run.
That's what I was about
too.
to say.
He's so good. He's so underappreciated for what he does
underappreciated.
with setting the edge and run defense.
No,
Absolutely.
and that's something that's big in this game, I believe, just because of the way that they try to. I think there's gonna be opportunity for the Jets to try to run at the edges. They probably will if they don't see success. And Tank you brought up Tank. I'm glad that you did. He's one of the best. I think he was ranked number 1 or number 2 as an edge defender last year against the run. So that's a really good point. It's good.
Thanks, guys. All right. Well, prepare for takeoff because your Dallas Cowboys are taking on the New York Jets at home at AT&T Stadium on Sunday. Ladies, we are back here on Monday, so we will have plenty to talk about, I'm sure, as we do every Monday following a Sunday game. Hopefully it's another Victory Monday. Thank you guys so much for joining us this week. Again, we're back on Monday, 4 o'clock Central Time, Monday through Thursday every week as our season continues on. Thank you all so much for watching. For Jess, Aisha, and Christy, we appreciate you guys so much. Have a great rest of your day, and we will see you back here on Monday. Bye.
This has been a production of DallasCowboys.com and the Dallas Cowboys Football Club.
How about this, Cowboys? Yeah!